Well, hey guys, welcome to the channel. We are looking at a whole array of new products for scaletrains.com. I've got Shane Wilson with me, the man that heads the company. Lots of people behind the scenes that do a lot of hard work.
Amen.
Every day. I learned to finally say that. Shane has trained me to finally talk about some of the folks behind the scenes, but Shane's on screen to talk about all of the new announcements for essentially what would have been Amherst Train Show. So Shane, you want to talk about what you got coming and anything else? It's your show.
Well, James, thanks for taking the time to come and visit with us. We're actually in the virtual Railfan Studios. Want to thank them for their hospitality and allowing us to do some video here today. And it's kind of neat because we've got actually a mini version of the trade show booth and a ton of new announcements. We actually have 3 all-new products and a major industry announcement to share with your viewers. And so we'll start off with the N-Scale Multimax. And I'll go ahead and hand that one to you.
I'll hold it up. This is a lot more amateur production than virtual Railfan, but we'll make it work. So go ahead and talk your heart away.
So on the so this is an N-Scale rivet counter Gunderson Multimax auto rack. You'll notice that it's very distinguishable by the large logo panels on the BNSF car. They're orange on the sides. Really makes it stand out from an auto train. There are 4 different versions. There's an early, intermediate, late, and current version. A couple of different styles of indoors. This is the angled version indoor. There's also what we'll call a stepped indoor. And as you look at the end detail, you'll see the coupler cut levers, the knuckle coupler, and 3 different versions on the, like you'll see stirrup steps at the bottom. You'll also see versions with grab irons on the ends and then grab irons on the ends and the sides on the earlier cars. All the underframe detail, all the plumbing is there. And you'll also see the body-mounted trucks as well as the body-mounted couplers. And of course, all the major railroads own this particular car now. This was first built in 2014. So if you're running like our Tier 4 Gevo or our Dash 9, this will be perfect for those. You know, you've got BNSF, Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific, Kansas City Southern, and I probably missed 1 or 2, but a variety of road names, and of course they're available for pre-order now on our website as well as select retailers, and they're looking for delivery for these probably mid-summer-ish, somewhere in that time frame.
Cool. Very neat. N-Scalers will be happy with that. And I know Bob has already messaged me and said he's blowing up your website with orders. So,
thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
All right, and next you want to move over to HO and talk about some gondolas?
Yeah, let's talk about the Kit Classics. This is our second Kit Classics freight car. James, the first thing you'll notice when you pick it up is the weight.
Oh yeah.
These are CB&Q Havelock shops built, which is just outside of Lincoln, Nebraska. These were built in the late 60s. You would have seen them running probably well into the 90s, early 2000s. Very unique cars. You look at the side detail there, you'll see the square profile on the upper cord, and that runs between the grab irons on both ends of the car. And then you'll also notice on the bottom of the car is an angled, I'll call it a flat kind of piece of metal that runs all the way from the right between the final 2 ribs to the very edge of those. And then James is showing the underside of the car. We did something a little different on the underside this time. It has actually some separate, a 1-piece separately applied brake system. So it gives a little bit more relief. You'll also notice the body-mounted couplers and the body-mounted trucks. The trucks actually have metal wheels. And then as James kind of turns it towards the end of the car, you'll notice the corrugations. And of course it has a separately applied brake wheel. And then looking inside the car, you'll see all the slats as well as the bolt pattern. So a lot of detail inside the car and outside the car, and a great stand-in car for a lot of railroads. This is a 52-foot, 6-inch gondola, so a good size for a 4x8 layout. For folks who have tighter radius curves, or if you're looking for value price trains, these are still selling for $17.99, so a good price point on those as well. And when you're done assembling the car, you can put it back in the package. So, you know, James, I'm sure you've gone to train shows or gone to the club, and when you get there with like a little blue box kit, the couplers are broke off, and this way it'll safely store the car.
They call it a blister?
Yeah, it's a blister pack. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep.
And you got Burlington's, C&W, Sioux Line, Norfolk and Western, BN, and Canadian
Conrail.
Or Conrail. I thought I saw it in there. So that's all of the schemes that you're producing?
In the first production, right?
Yep.
And there'll be more.
Okay, cool. Well, what's next, Shane?
All right, so coming over to the middle of the table, kind of taking up the lion's share here. This is our next museum quality locomotive, James. And, you know, when you look at the museum quality, the first locomotive, of course, was the Big Blow turbine, the 3-unit set, and that's really big. And we said for the second release, let's go completely opposite. We're going really small. What you'll see in front of us is the museum quality SDL 39 locomotive. This is a 6-axle locomotive in essentially a Jeep 4-axle body. And so this is a very unique locomotive. There were only 10 made for the Milwaukee Road. Milwaukee needed a locomotive that would pull long trains in their upper Midwest short lines. Their short lines had light rail and light bridges, and couldn't get a standard 6-axle over. It would be way too heavy. So they came up with this concept. 5 were made and produced in '69, and the next 5 in '72. All right, so as we take a look at all the different versions, we're going to start out with the Milwaukee Road. This is the as-delivered version in 1969. A couple of standout things that you'll be able to see. First of all, they had snow shields on the early versions, and then, of course, they had a little bit different E-bell. And the early versions, if you look right up in the front of the cab here on the nose, you'll see some vents or louvers, and they had those also on the engineer's side, back where his feet would be on the cab side. The early versions have that. The later versions do not have those vents on them. And a lot of Milwaukee details, like the short fuel tank, and then all the normal rivet counter details you've become accustomed to, tread plate details, see-through steps, all the separately applied parts. As we go to the little bit later version, this one was delivered in '72. A different type of E-bell on the roof. You'll notice the stow shields have been removed. There is on the early samples here, there is a mistake. Those brackets shouldn't be there. They were actually delivered without the snow shields. We'll get that corrected for production. They did add a winterization hatch. For those cold winters up in the Northeast, and both versions actually have the all-weather window on them. And then, of course, the Soo Line acquired the Milwaukee, and that's the next group of 3. Soo Line did a couple of things. They added, of course, the winterization hatch. They also, the later versions all have beacons, just like the late delivery Milwaukee versions. The one thing they did do is they moved the bell to just behind the fireman's side in the cab, and of course went to a steel bell. 3 different road numbers in the Bandit scheme. Well, they call it Bandit because essentially what they did is they painted out all of the markings from the Milwaukee, and then of course put the Soo reporting mark and the Soo numbers on them. And then moving on, of course, Wisconsin Central acquired some units for their short line versions. A couple of different variants here. You'll notice we've got them kind of paired off. These first 2 are going to be early variations, and a couple of paint schemes here. You'll notice the deluxe gold, that's kind of the brighter gold, as well as the cream scheme. A lot of differences in the handrails. You'll notice some different color schemes there. Both have the beacons, both have the winterization hatches. I'm going to pick one up here and kind of flip it over, and you'll also notice, like on this one, it's got spare couplers on the rear of the fuel tank. You'll also notice the shorter fuel tank. And then we'll go to the later versions. The later versions have ditch lights, and they're the very rapid alternating ditch lights, just like Wisconsin Central had. And one of the cool things is they still retain their class lights. So you're going to be able to cycle between red, white, green, and off on the class lights, and be able to use the ditch lights as well. And they are front and rear. A couple of other things on the fuel tanks. The later tanks have the waist extensions on them, and some different plow variations on the WCs. And you'll also notice the cream scheme. It has a very different Wisconsin Central logo on it. So a little bit of variety there if you're a WC fan. Later on, the locomotives were sold to a railroad in Chile called Fopaza. This is our first outside North America version, and very unique on these locomotives. The first thing you'll notice are the wire screens all the way around the windows. Looking a little further back on the locomotive, you'll see that they move the horn, and it has this really long standoff off the car body side. And of course, you've got red truck Hyatt bearing caps versus the black ones on the 2345. And another little detail, I'll flip it around so you can see. Most all the other versions, that this ratchet brake has a chain that hangs down. They actually had a chain guard installed later in their life, so we've replicated that as well. And for these locomotives, we're taking pre-orders now. Look for just before Christmas delivery, and they'll also come in a special museum quality box, a little bit different than what we did on the Big Blow turbine. but still a special collector piece. Will also include the magnifying glass so you can see the difference, and the museum quality pen.
We've saved a huge announcement for last, essentially, in the sense that it's really going to ripple throughout the hobby, I think. Shane, you want to talk about what's next for your last announcement for this segment?
Well, James, one of the things we're asked for all the time, a couple of different things actually, are steam locomotives. That's always a big deal. We're asked if we're ever going to get into different scales. We're often asked, are we ever going to do passenger cars? Well, we're going to do that in a big way. And we're excited today to announce that we have acquired all of MTH's HO tooling as well as their S-gauge tooling. And we think this is going to be an awesome addition to our lineup. We are literally quadrupling our lineup with this acquisition. We've already started moving tooling to our factory. Our factory's doing some already test shots to make sure all the molds work and that we got everything that we expected in the acquisition. And a lot of changes coming up too. We'll be, of course, putting our motors in all of their locomotives. We'll be going to ESU, DCC, and sound. And don't really expect a lot of changes in the current lineup. The MTH steam locomotives are really on the level of rivet counter, and the passenger cars are pretty much at a rivet counter level. So as we look at the lineup here on the table, there's a variety of products in the MTH line, and everything from steam locomotives, which are really at the rivet counter level. You've got diesel locomotives, going to be kind of in between rivet counter and operator. Do have some road specific detail, but not quite to the level of rivet counter. Passenger cars are really well done. The freight cars are as well. We've also got acquired their track line in HO, so we bring the track line to market. And one of the great things is the MTH had designed several locomotives and freight cars, but had never tooled them. So we'll actually, there's probably about 10 locomotives. I don't know if we'll bring them all to market, but we'll bring some for sure. And there's about 10 freight cars. And one of the cool things is we look at the freight cars, they're all steam era. And when you look at the variations that MTH had designed, there's one car that they had 11 different variations. So it's definitely up to the rivet counter standards. We'll go through them, make sure they meet all the rivet counter level that we expect, and then we'll start bringing those cars out over the next few years. From a production standpoint, it's going to take a while to get these online. Probably won't see the first products until sometime in 22. And then, of course, we also acquired all of the S-scale tooling. We really see a market for S-scale, and when you look at S, for guys like myself that can't see, we really think that there's an opportunity in S. We've always thought that, but pretty expensive for us to start from scratch, and this is a way for us to enter that market and have a complete line of locomotives, freight cars, passenger cars, and track.
Thanks, Shane, for going over all the announcements. Essentially, what would have been Amherst, we got to still cover it without all the weather and stuff. That's been the going joke of the day. And thanks again to Virtual Railfan for allowing me into their studio and to cover these announcements as well while we have some sort of a setup similar to what you'd see in Amherst. Huge announcements, really, considering the museum quality line announcement, the N-scale announcement, and MTH's coming to scale trains, the HO and the S-gauge. And then you've got to remember all of Scale Train's other products that are already in the pipeline. I mean, you guys just continually churn out great products. We've got some Tier 3 GEVOs coming. We've got tenders coming. One thing we didn't really talk about is this is one thing I'm looking forward to. I can't think of the designator right now. It's the SD45, yeah. But they had this locomotive just down the road at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum for a little while. So, people that have, I don't know if it's still there, I don't think it is, so. but it was visiting, I think, or it might have been a VMT.
Yeah, it's a VMT. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I really got to see that, and I have one of those on order as well. So, great stuff.
So do I.
Yep. Great stuff with ESU. We'll be able to see ESU brought to the MTH line, and it's just going to be an exciting future for Scale Train. So, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for coming, James.
Yeah, to go over this with the viewers, and we'll get this video up. You'll be able to see this very shortly after the Virtual Railfan coverage. And if you guys aren't aware of Virtual Railfan, be sure to check out their page. Just go to the YouTube search bar and look for Virtual Railfan. They've got cameras all over, just capturing great rail fanning action all over the country, and they're also doing a virtual hobby show for Amherst that's gotten a lot of great feedback from what I've seen here in studios. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time right here on the channel. Take care.
Thanks.